All right, welcome to our Art of War P3 raid plan and video guide. So we're just going to go step by step through each part of the dance. So a quick note as we come into the landing from the end of phase 2, platform 2, into the final platform for phase 3, you will be taking a fair amount of damage coming into the landing. So make sure that you are fighting against the push and just really focusing on living, surviving, self healing, all those things. So that way we can land with the full 20. So, for progression purposes, we're not going to worry about the burn at the start, but just so you know, when we land and we burn, the goal is going to be sub 60%. Lower is obviously better. Healers, you will have healing cooldowns assigned for phase 3, but just be aware there's a lot of heavy damage as all 8 of the stars land. So I know it may feel like you have time to settle in because there's not a lot going on mechanically, but that's going to be a pretty intense area of healing. So just be ready to start pumping as soon as we land. SAF for the tanks. The initial plan is going to be for me to take the first and third gravity, so I'll get boss at this point, so you're going to be with the raid and I'll be rotated around to the opposite side. It doesn't particularly matter where the tank stands during the burn. It's just you have to make sure that you're away from the raid by the time the burn ends. All right, so that takes us to the first mechanic, and that's going to be the rings. So like on the slide, we're going to stack close to where our burn position was. Doesn't have to be a tight stack, but a pretty close cluster, so we can bait the ring spawns. This is a variable mechanic, so you're always going to be checking left or right, and there's going to be 2 different movements. One if the first ring is on the left, and another if the first ring is on the right. The ring that we spawn behind us as a raid is always going to be the last ring that we take, so that's why it's marked with 3. SAF, just in case you end up tanking the first round, those tank notes give directions about how to move and where to stand. All right, so we're going to walk through each of the 2 variations. So we're going to start with right side first, and you're just going to follow the diagram. Just like it shows here, you're going to rotate around to the right towards the first ring. You're going to stand as close as possible to it so that way you can get your debuff immediately. Then you're going to continue rotate your rotation towards about halfway towards where the second ring spawns. And then after you get that debuff, then you're going to drop back so you can create space between you and the third ring. Once your debuff from the second ring drops off, you can take the one for the third ring, and then you're done with that ring mechanic. So let me go ahead and play a video so that way you can see what this looks like. All right, so you can see this is right side ring first. You rotate the ring, you stand next to it, take it, you rotate about halfway through, debuff drops off, you're through the second ring, and then you fade back, waiting for your debuff to drop off, and then you're through the third ring. Okay, so that's the variation where the first ring is the right ring. This is when the variation for when the first ring is the left ring, and it's just a mirror of the other one. So instead of rotating right, you start with a left rotation to the first ring, standing as close as possible. You continue the rotation about halfway towards the second ring to get that debuff, and then you fade back, allow your second debuff to drop, and then you'll take the third ring, and you'll be done with the mechanic. There will be the ring mechanic rotates and appears multiple times throughout the fight. It is handled the exact same way every single time it comes up. The orientation, where you are in the room, our starting point will change a little bit depending on what part of the fight we are in, but relative to the boss, it will always be to the back of the boss. So, the boss may be facing to the left or to the right, the front, you're always going to be to the back, so you orient yourself that way. So let's take a look at what the video for the left side first. So again, here you'll see the ring spawns first to the left. We rotate left, stand next to it, pick up the debuff, rotate a little bit over towards the mid, second debuff, fade towards the back, let your second debuff drop off, pick up the third debuff. And Saf, you'll see in the slide that there are basically two combinations for the tanks because of where we're standing. If it's a left side rotation first, that's a pretty easy combo. If it's a right side rotation first, you may get as many as 3 debuffs, so just be ready for that. Always have a defensive in your pocket just in case it ends up being right side first. Okay, so the rings have resolved, and that brings us to Devour. This is where we are hiding in the stars. So if you look at the diagram, there's 4 circles that we're going to be using, left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, because there's 8 stars that are active, we need a reference point to understand where 1, 2, 3, and 4, because keep in mind, throughout the fight, these stars are rotating. So as you're studying the raid plan, keep in mind these are not static positions. So these show snapshots of where you want to be based on the rotation. So in order to orient yourselves, when it comes time for the Devour, you're going to look for a ping on the map. That ping is going to indicate the midpoint. So in this case, you're going to see a ping that lands between spots 2 for circle and spots 3 for diamond. That denotes the midpoint. So to the immediate left of that ping is going to be 2. To the left of that is going to be star. To the immediate right of the ping is going to be 3. And then to the right of that is going to be 4. So you have your group assignments in the upper left corner. The weak aura is also going to feed that to you. For the Devourer, it's very important that you do not go in early. You're going to get a red warning on your screen from the weak aura with a countdown. Do not panic and run in. Do not freak out and run in immediately. If you go in immediately, you will die. So you need to wait. So you move close to your position. Wait for at least 1.5 seconds. Heroes will thank you if you can go closer to 1 second, but 1.5 seconds is reasonable. Once the countdown reaches 1.5 seconds, then you can step in. In Mythic, we have to have 5 people in each stars. You cannot have any more than 5. So if for whatever reason you are out of position, and this is very important for Prague, if you are out of position and cannot get to your assigned soak, you have to sacrifice and die. You cannot just jump into a random star, or you will wipe the raid. You also cannot jump into a random star on the opposite side, or we won't have stars for use later on. It's either your assigned star or nothing. That's it. All right, as we exit the Devourer, we need to rotate around the boss because we're coming up on the first gravity. So the gravity is a new mechanic for Mythic, but it's the same mechanic that we saw in P2. So we'll go over those assignments in a second. But how this works is groups 1, 2, and 3 will rotate around left towards the stack point. So you're going to be following the white arrows. Group 4 minus the active tank will be rotating around towards the right side to the stack point. You're following the green arrows. The active tank, Saf, just so you're aware, you're going to be following behind groups 1 through 3. So you're going to be rotating to the left, but you need to make sure you're not going so fast that you overtake those. So you have to make sure that you're lagging behind. For that same reason, if you're in groups 1, 2, and 3, you need to book it because there's a tank coming up behind you. And if you take too long, they will run you over. On the stack point, we're going to have assigned defensive, raid defensive, so that's probably going to be AMC darkness, but I'll defer to Band-Aid on the precise assignment there. Healers, be aware this is also going to be the first supernova, so that's why we have that stack point, so that's going to be high damage. So immediately coming after the soak, you're going to take a tank grip. So Saf, you can see the tank positioning there. The gravity assignments are the same as from phase 2, and you'll see them on the left of the screen just so you have a reference point. So you want to look at where your gravity positions are relative to the tank. And so let me go back a slide. So you can see that's the stack point there on the blue square. And then from there, you want to spread into these 3 gravity soak points. And again, those are the same from phase 2 with the same formation from phase 2. So in order to get into this position, the blue group, which is primarily range, you're going to be fighting against the pool to try to get to that position, that farther position. Healers, you're more or less you're going to kind of fight, kind of stay, because you more or less want to stay where we were in the stacked position. So don't let it pull you out of position, but don't fight it so hard that you end up going into the range group. Melee, which is the red group, you're going to allow the grip to shift you into position. You might have to fight it against it a little bit at the end, but initially allow it to move you. So let's see what that looks like. So again, we're coming into the stack point, and then the grip is moving you into those positions. So let me play that one more time so you can see it. And group, and then you all deal with the grip differently. Let me see if I can pause that mid-play. All right, so you see how you've ranged, healer, melee were kind of initially stacked. So as the pull comes out, melee are letting it pull, healers are using it to stay in place, and ranged are pushing against it. So you end up with that spread. So left from right, ranged, left, healers, mid, melee, right. Okay. After gravity, we need to rotate into position for the second set of rings. Like I said before, the second set of rings is going to be handled the exact same way. Orientation is going to be shifted a little bit relative to the room, but relative to the boss, again, it's always going to be behind the boss. So you're going to follow those white arrows to the stack point at the blue square with the smiley face. Tank's going to be opposite, just like in the first ring. So melee, keep in mind you've got a bit more of a trek range. You're pretty close by, so you don't have to move too far. Rings 2, again, just like before, you're going to look left or right to see where it starts, and you're either going to follow the left pattern or the right pattern that we went over before. So, no surprises there. After rings 2, we have a back-to-back set of mechanics. It's going to be the second gravities, which are the, not the star soaks, but the phase 2 soaks, into the second tank grip. So this is a triangle formation that we saw in phase 2 instead of the line formation. I think some videos refer to it as the L formation, same idea. But after rings 2, you're going to move into these gravity 2 positions. So a note here, you do not move into a stack. So that move into a stack on the first gravities, that was a unique positioning. So it's going to go, we do the ring 2 movement into the gravity 2 positions. Gravity are going to go off, and then the tank grips will pull you to the tank. So it's important here, everybody kind of needs to work together. The tank is going to position towards that back to get that correct angle, but at a certain point, and they may, either myself or Saf may make some micro adjustments if it looks like we need to clean up that angle. But probably about a second, second and a half before the grip actually happens, the tank is going to be freezing in place. So that way the rest of the raid can make micro adjustments. So if you see how these lines here give you a clear path to the tanks, you want to make sure that whatever line is connecting you to the tank has a clear path. So, if you're slightly out of position, that means melee, you're going to be a little bit more forward. Range, you're going to want to be a little bit more forward. Healer group, you're going to want to be a little bit more back. So let's see what that looks like. So again, this is gravity 2 into tank grip 2. So you resolve the gravity first, and then you allow the grip to take you. Okay, so we've done gravity 2, you've been gripped by the tank, and now we need to move into position for rings 3. As you can see from the diagram, it's not a very big move because the tank will have already rotated the boss around so that the back is pretty much to where you get gripped to. Saf, you'll see this note a few times throughout the slides. If you just took a gravity, wait for that gravity debuff to drop off before you tank the boss, or you'll probably get smashed. The converse of that is if you are the active tank and gravity has just gone off, be ready to take one enhanced auto attack. So just have a defensive ready for that. Or probably active mitigation should be enough, but don't be naked at that point. For the rest of the raid, you're going to be moving in position for raid rings 3. Like I said, it's a very short move. It's not a rotation, so you've got gripped by the tank. You're just going to move forward a little bit in front of that second safe star from the left. Rings 3, same as before. You're going to check left, you're going to check right, and then you're going to follow the movement depending if it starts left or if it starts right. After rings 3 resolves, then you're going to move again into the triangle formation. This one is different because the order that the mechanics resolve in is different. So you're going to get gripped first, and then the gravity is going to be resolved. So what that means is you need to position for the gravity, and then your hands come off the keyboard. At least they come off the movement keys, because you're going to be gripped in formation. So you're going to get in formation, and you're going to allow the tank grip to move you in formation. It is extremely important. I know I said take your hands off the keyboard. It is extremely important that you do not fight this pool at all. You cannot move. You cannot resist the pull. You cannot leap. You cannot port. You cannot do anything. You have to let the grip fully take you. Otherwise, you will be out of position for the gravities and we wipe. As with before, you want to check the angle. But again, you have to pause and freeze in place. So this is what it looks like. See how it moves you and then the gravity resolves. So let me play that again because it's important to see that. So you get in position, hands off the keyboard, hands off the keyboard. Now gravity resolves. So again, you get in position, then it grips you, and then gravity resolves. Do not fight that pull. All right, we are up again. After that tank grip pulls you, then we are going to move into positions for the second set of devours. Because there's only 4 safe stars left, it's pretty obvious which ones that you go to. Again, as we face the back of the boss, left to right, that will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Exact same assignments as before. You'll see those on the upper left of the screen handled the exact same way. Again, do not go in early. And we'll say not safe or unsafe in red letters on your screen. Do not panic. Wait for the countdown. Watch for it to cross the 1.5 second mark and then step in. Once again, Do not enter early. Okay. After the second devour, there is not a rotation. So after the second devour, you've stepped into the stars have exploded. We then move into our gravity positions. So if you look at the diagram, these are the same gravities that we've been doing the entire fight, but your positioning is a little bit different. So if you take a look at it, the gravity soak groups are in between the stars. They're not behind, they're not in front, they're in between the stars. Again, reminding you that these stars are rotating, they are not static. That means once you get into your gravity positions, you're going to have to stutter step to rotate with the stars. Range DPS, I know you want to do damage. Healers, I know you have to do healing, but you have to rotate. You cannot stop and break formation to try to finish a cast. You need to stay in formation and rotate with the stars. For the tanks, they're going to be going opposite. So you can see that tank node there, Saf. So for gravity 4, let's take a look at the video. So this is from the tank perspective, but you can see how the gravities are between those stars there. Play it again one more time. So you can see how those gravity positions, they are between the stars and they're rotating with them. Again, movement takes priority over casting. If that means you can't cast, then that means you can't cast. But you need to move in formation. Immediately after the fourth gravity resolves, there's going to be a tank grip. As you can see from the diagram, the tank is on the opposite side of the boss from everybody. So the big picture rule is live this grip. So you can see if you're ranged in melee, you might be able to kind of cheat around the sides of the boss, but especially if you're in the healer group, this is fully running against the pool so that way you don't get gripped into the boss. So again, ranged in melee, some of you may be able to squeak around the outside, but best practice is to push fully against the tank grip so that way you don't get moved and certainly don't get moved into the boss. This is a play to live moment. So really, it's, you don't have to stay in your precise gravity positions after it resolves. It's really about making sure you don't hit by the stars, you don't get gripped into the boss, and as you can see, we lose some space on the outer part of the ring, so make sure you don't run into that as you're pulling against. Once we have the tank grip has resolved, that brings us to ring 4. Ring 4, same as rings 1 through 3. You look left, you look right, you figure out which one is starting first, and you do the correct movement for that. This is when we empty the tank on survivability. So any defensives, immunities, health pots, health stones, anything else that you possibly have that could help you live, that is being used on these rings. Make sure you don't use it early. Obviously you want to wait until the first ring hits, but at that point, everything you can to live. So there's a very good possibility if everybody lives these rings, or enough people live these rings, that the fight just kind of ends here. But we're going to map out a little bit further just in case we need 5-10 more seconds. After rings 4, there comes a gravity stoke. So again, let me show you here. So behind the boss, we do the rings, tank is rotating around, we move to our gravity positions. Gravity 5 is very similar to gravity 4, just the orientation's changed, but again, you're between the stars, you're rotating. Same gravity groups as before. And this is followed by tank grip. I didn't draw the lines here, but same way as against tank grip 4. You want to pull against it. Again, some of you might be able to cheat around the sides, but best practice, run against the pool. Like I noted in the bottom right, be ready to adjust average gravity 5. This is all about living. This is not... Position is pretty strict the rest of the fight, but if we get to this point, this is all about living that grip. So wherever you need to stand to make sure you live that tank grip, do that. So melee and range, you can see right after the gravity resolves, you may be able to sprint forward, so that way you can get a clean grip and keep DPSing instead of having to fight against it. But again, whatever you can, only what you can do and survive. So that takes us to the end of P3. As I noted in this slide, listen for the call to commit or continue the fight. So like I mentioned before, if we have enough DPS, the boss may just fall over at rings 4 before we have to do gravity 5. But again, don't assume that the fight is going to go on. So position for those gravities unless you hear the call. Ignore gravity, kill boss, or commit, kill boss, something like that. Just a couple of final notes for the prog. I know this has gone long, but first, I mentioned it throughout the video a couple of times, but remember, if you are studying off to the raid plan, that the stars are rotating. They're not a static position, so keep that in mind. 2, it is important that you watch a video, preferably from your class's POV, so that way you can be used to the pacing. As we're going through the slides, it may seem like you have a lot of time. A lot of these mechanics happen very quickly where, it'll be rings resolve, you have a few seconds and you already need to be in your gravity position. So make sure that you watch a video so that way you're ready for the pacing, because that's not something I can really capture in the slideshow. And third, healers, you don't have this luxury. Tanks, we don't have this luxury. Well, I guess we do. Healers, you don't have the luxury because you got to be pumping. So a note for healers, though, is you have to rely on your other healers. The majority of these mechanics, the position is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable, which means you cannot play the healer card and say, well, I couldn't get there because I had to cast another heal, or I didn't move, or I was slightly out of position because I've got a healing cooldown here, or I needed to finish this cast. No. Positioning and movement come first, healing comes second, which means you have to trust the rest of the healers to fill in the gaps if you have to move and aren't able to cast. During prog DPS, bosses on rails. As you can see here, this slide 17 with gravity 5 into tank grip 5. This is the absolute end. For all purposes, we're not going to learn any more of the fight after that, but the fight is on rails up until then, regardless of how much damage you do. So that means in early prog, live the fight. We don't need you doing damage. We need you learning the dance. We need you executing the movements properly, correctly, and precisely. And that's it for phase 3. So thank you for watching and hope this was helpful.